It was supposed to be the perfect vacation, a week at sea on the luxurious Seaborn Horizon, a brand new cruise ship boasting everything from world-class dining to panoramic views of the open ocean. For weeks, the group of friends had been planning their trip, counting down the days. Nothing could go wrong. For Mark, the skeptic of the group, this cruise was nothing more than a break from his stressful work life. He didn't believe in ghosts or haunted ships, but for Emily, his girlfriend, and their friends Josh, Sarah, and Ethan, it was all about adventure. They had heard the rumors about the Seaborn Horizon, that it was cursed, or haunted, or that some strange occurrences had happened to passengers in the past. But rumors were just that, rumors. The ship left port at sunset, the warm glow of the horizon casting a golden hue over the water. The ship's massive hull cut through the waves like a sleek predator, making the gentle rocking of the ocean almost soothing. As they sailed out of the harbor, the group gathered on the top deck, sipping cocktails and laughing. The excitement in the air was palpable, the kind of energy only a vacation could bring. But as the sun dipped beneath the horizon and night fell, something strange happened. A sudden chill swept through the air, almost as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees in an instant. The group shrugged it off, attributing it to the sea breeze, but Mark felt it, that uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach, like they were being watched. "I think it's time to head inside," Emily suggested, her voice a little too casual, like she was trying to shake off the same feeling that gnawed at Mark. They made their way down to the dining hall, which was lavishly decorated in golds and deep blues, designed to make passengers feel like royalty. As they sat down to their first meal, the waiter, who had introduced himself as Leonard, was unusually quiet. His smile, though friendly, seemed strained, as if he was forcing it. "So, how's the trip going so far?" Sarah asked, trying to make conversation. Leonard's eyes flickered nervously. "It's been wonderful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "A lovely ship, no complaints." But then he paused, his smile slipping for just a fraction of a second. He looked around, his eyes darting toward the doors, then back at the group. "If you ever get a chance," he continued, his voice lower now, "there's a part of the ship you should avoid. It's not on the map, but it's there." The group exchanged puzzled glances. "What do you mean?" Josh asked, leaning forward, intrigued. Leonard glanced over his shoulder as if making sure no one else was listening. "It's hard to explain. You won't find it unless you're looking for it. But if you do, don't go down there. Trust me." The group was silent for a moment. Mark, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "You're telling us not to go somewhere on a cruise ship? That's a bit odd, don't you think?" Leonard's smile returned, but it was forced. "It's just a suggestion, sir, a warning." With that, he quickly turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the kitchen. The group stared after him, a little unnerved, but quickly laughed it off. "That guy's got issues," Ethan said, shaking his head. "What? You think there's some kind of haunted, off-limits section on this ship?" "I don't know," Emily said, her voice light, "but it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Why would he say something like that? Probably some weird superstition," Mark said, dismissing it with a wave of his hand. "I'll tell you what, though, if I can find that off-limits section, I'm going to check it out. No way I'm letting a creepy waiter scare me off." They all chuckled, but deep down, Mark's curiosity was piqued, and somewhere, just beneath the surface of his skepticism, a small voice whispered that maybe there was more to the ship than anyone realized. This story seems to be getting scarier, doesn't it? If you want more stories like this, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. This helps create even more scary for you. The night stretched on, and the Seaborn Horizon continued its journey through the vast ocean, cutting a path through the inky blackness. The group of friends retired to their rooms, the eerie words of Leonard lingering in the back of their minds. Mark was the last to leave the bar. He had stayed behind, nursing a whiskey as the others headed back to their cabins. It had been a long day, and a few extra drinks seemed like a good idea. The quiet hum of the ship's engine was almost comforting, the gentle sway lulling him into a trance trance-like state. As he stood up to leave, he noticed something odd. The hallway outside was unusually silent. It was as if the whole ship had fallen into a strange, unnatural stillness. He made his way down the corridor, the soft click of his shoes on the polished floor echoing in the silence. The lights above flickered momentarily, and Mark glanced up, annoyed. Stupid ship, he muttered to himself. But then something else caught his attention. At the far end of the hallway, the door to one of the rooms was slightly ajar. That wasn't unusual. Crew members probably hadn't finished cleaning, but the way the door moved slightly with the motion of the ship was unsettling. He paused, his curiosity getting the better of him. The name on the door read Room 612, but he didn't recognize the passenger. He knew most of the guests by sight. This room was on the second-class deck. Strange. He couldn't recall anyone mentioning they were staying there. Mark felt an odd pull toward the door. He stood there for a moment, listening. Silence. Not a single sound from inside the room. That was what bothered him the most. It was as if the room was holding its breath. Without thinking, Mark stepped closer, his hand brushing against the cool metal of the doorframe. As he pushed the door open, a strange, stale air hit him, damp and heavy. The lights in the room flickered, but not like they were malfunctioning. It felt deliberate. Mark squinted into the darkness, his heart thumping in his chest, unsure of what he was looking for. That's when he saw it. At the far side of the room, in the corner by the window, a tall, shadowy figure stood perfectly still. It was unnaturally tall, too tall, and its outlines seemed wrong. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there, watching him. Mark froze. His first instinct was to run, but his feet refused to obey. His eyes locked onto the figure, and for the briefest moment, it felt like time itself had slowed. The figure's shape seemed to shift in the dim light, distorting in ways that made no sense. "Hello?" Mark's voice cracked, his throat dry. He knew the room was empty. He'd seen the guest list. There was no one booked in 612. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as if studying him. Mark's breath caught. He took a hesitant step forward, and that's when it happened. The door slammed shut behind him with a force that shook the entire room. The lights flickered violently, and in that brief moment of darkness, Mark heard the unmistakable sound of breathing, slow, deep, and too close. His heart pounded in his chest as he spun around, his hand reaching for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. Panic surged through him. He tried to pull the door open with all his strength, but it was as if something or someone was holding it shut from the other side. The room seemed to grow colder with each passing second. He could feel a presence, something pressing in around him, suffocating him. He turned back to the dark corner where the figure had stood. But now, it was gone. There was no sound, no movement, just a heavy, oppressive silence. Mark's mind raced as he looked around the room. He needed to get out. His breathing quickened, his eyes darting around. The walls felt like they were closing in, and then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. The shadows in the corner of the room were moving, shifting, as if something was crawling out from the walls themselves. Mark spun around, his stomach dropping. The shadows were no longer just shadows. They were shapes, twisted, distorted versions of people. They slithered across the floor, their forms contorting unnaturally as they pulled themselves toward him. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow and empty. They were watching him. A voice, soft and raspy, whispered from the darkness, "Leave now, while you can." Mark's heart nearly stopped. His body was frozen in fear, his legs too weak to move. The shadows were getting closer, crawling toward him like spiders. Desperately, he grabbed the door handle again, and this time, it opened. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look back. Mark sprinted down the hallway, his breath ragged, his mind reeling. He could still feel the cold, the suffocating pressure of the room pressing in on him. He had to get back to his cabin. He had to tell the others. But as he turned a corner, he froze in his tracks. At the end of the hallway, standing completely still, was the same tall figure, its eyes dark, hollow pits locked onto him. And for a moment, Mark could have sworn he saw a twisted smile forming on the figure's face. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he was being followed. Every time he turned a corner, he swore he saw something out of the corner of his eye, a flash of movement, a silhouette in the distance. The closer he got to his cabin, the heavier the air became. It felt like the ship itself was alive, breathing in time with his quickening heartbeat. By the time Mark reached the door to his cabin, he was shaking, drenched in sweat, and his mind was racing. His hand fumbled with the keycard, and when the door finally opened, he rushed inside, locking it behind him with a deep sense of relief. He collapsed onto the bed, his mind replaying everything that had just happened: the figure in the room, the whispers, the shadows crawling out from the walls. The room was eerily silent now, but that didn't bring him any comfort. If anything, it made the fear worse. The silence felt wrong. He grabbed his phone, his hands still trembling, and called Emily. It rang 3 times before she picked up. "Mark, what's going on? You're not back yet." Emily's voice was laced with concern. I don't know how to explain this," Mark said, his voice tight. "Something's not right on this ship. I swear, I saw something. It's hard to describe, but I'm not imagining it. There's something here, something watching us." Emily was quiet for a long moment. Mark could hear the faint hum of the ship in the background. "Where are you now? Are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. "I'm in the cabin. I'm not leaving again tonight. I think I saw something in one of the rooms. I think I was followed." Emily hesitated before speaking again, her tone more serious now. "Mark, I just heard from Josh. He's been hearing things. He said there are noises coming from the hallway outside their room. He's freaked out." Mark's blood ran cold. "What kind of noises?" "Footsteps, scraping sounds, like something dragging on the floor. He's freaking out, and I don't know what to tell him. Tell him to stay inside. Don't let anyone open the door for anyone. We're getting off the ship first thing in the morning." But deep down, Mark knew that wouldn't be enough. They couldn't just leave. Something was wrong with the ship, something much bigger than they understood. And if Leonard's warning was anything to go by, whatever was happening had been going on for a long time. "Emily," Mark said, his voice urgent, "don't let anyone go into the hallways tonight. No matter what you hear, lock the door and stay in your cabin." "I will, but what about you? What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet. I need to think." Mark hung up before she could respond. He lay back on the bed, his mind racing. It was only a matter of time before the others started to experience the same thing. He had to warn them before it was too late. But as he closed his eyes, trying to calm his nerves, he heard it, the faintest sound coming from outside his door. A knock, knock, knock. He froze, his breath hitching in his chest. The knock came again, 3 times. He felt his pulse quicken. It wasn't the soft, polite knock of someone who had accidentally come to the wrong door. No, this knock was deliberate. It was slow, measured, as though the person outside was waiting for him to react. Mark's mind flashed to Leonard's warning. He'd said there was something on the ship, something that shouldn't be there, and this felt like a sign. He slowly stood up, his knees weak, and crept toward the door. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the doorknob, his breath shallow. Was it one of the crew? One of his friends? Maybe? No. Something told him that wasn't the case. Another knock, louder this time. The door seemed to rattle on its hinges. Mark backed away, his eyes wide with panic. No one was supposed to be out there. No one except a low, guttural voice called from the other side. It was barely a whisper, but Mark could hear it clearly. "Let me in, Mark." The voice was familiar, too familiar. It was Emily's. His blood ran cold. Emily? But how? He stood frozen, staring at the door. His instincts screamed at him to open it, to see if she was really out there. But the words that had been spoken were wrong. The tone was all wrong. There was something off about it. "Emily," he called, his voice shaking. There was no response, only the sound of slow, deliberate breathing. "Emily, if that's really you." He took a step toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'm opening it, okay?" But the voice that answered was no longer hers. It was distorted, twisted. "Let me in, Mark, or you'll never see her again." The door handle jiggled violently, and for a split second, Mark considered opening it. He didn't want to believe what his mind was telling him. He had to see her, had to make sure she was okay. But the fear gnawed at him. The voice, whoever it was, had changed. It wasn't Emily anymore. With shaking hands, Mark stepped back, staring at the door as if it would open on its own. He didn't want to know what was on the other side. He didn't want to hear the words he was sure would follow. The knock came again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it wasn't the door that rattled. It was the walls, and they were closing in. The ship was alive. That was the only thought that consumed Mark's mind as he lay on his bed, eyes wide open, heart hammering in his chest. He had heard the voice, he had felt the presence behind the door, and in that moment, he knew something had come aboard the Seaborn Horizon, and it wasn't going to stop until it claimed them all. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a message from Emily. "Mark, are you okay? I can hear noises outside the door. Please, answer me." He picked up the phone with trembling hands and typed back quickly. "Don't open the door. Whatever you do, don't open it." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "Something's on this ship. Something isn't right." A long pause. Then, Emily replied, "I don't think it's just me anymore. I just heard Josh shouting in the hallway. I think something's in his room." Mark didn't wait to read the rest of the message. He was already on his feet, grabbing his jacket and rushing out of his cabin. He wasn't going to wait around for the others to be taken. They needed to act. The hallway was eerily quiet when Mark stepped outside. The fluorescent lights above flickered again, casting a sickly, pale glow across the ship's pristine walls. The faint sound of the ocean outside the portholes was the only thing breaking the silence. Mark's mind raced as he walked quickly down the corridor. What the hell was going on? He reached the door to Josh and Sarah's cabin and hesitated. The door was closed, but he could hear muffled voices from inside Josh's, shouting, frantic. "Josh?" Mark banged on the door, but there was no response. Then, a voice, Sarah's voice, called out from within, strained, almost inaudible. "Please, help us. Something's here." It's not, Josh." Mark's heart sank. He had no time to waste. He banged on the door again, more desperately this time. "Sarah, open the door. I'm coming in." For a moment, there was only silence, but then the door cracked open. Sarah stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with terror, her hair disheveled, her clothes rumpled. "Mark, thank God," she whispered, pulling him inside. He stepped over the threshold, his eyes scanning the room. Josh was slumped in a chair near the far wall, staring blankly at the floor. His face was pale, his skin slick with sweat, and his eyes, they were wide, unblinking, locked in a permanent state of horror. "Josh?" Mark stepped forward, but Sarah grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Don't get too close," she said, her voice shaking. He's not the same. I think whatever's on this ship, it's in him now." Mark turned to her, his mind spinning. "What the hell do you mean, in him?" She swallowed hard. "It's like something's controlling him. His eyes, they don't even look human anymore. And the things he said, he's not the Josh I know." Mark's stomach churned. This wasn't just a haunted ship, it was something else, something far darker, and it wasn't content with just watching them, it was taking them. "Josh," Mark said softly, stepping closer. "What happened? Are you okay?" For a moment, Josh's eyes flickered, and a strange, distorted grin spread across his face. It wasn't a real smile, it was twisted, like something was forcing it into place. "He's coming for you, all of you," Josh rasped, his voice low and cracked. "You're already too late, it's already inside. You can't escape." Mark's blood ran cold. "What the hell is inside you, Josh?" But before Josh could respond, he stood up abruptly, his movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet with tangled strings. His body twitched as if something deep within him was fighting for control. Sarah screamed as Josh lunged toward her. Mark barely managed to shove her out of the way before Josh's hand grabbed his wrist, pulling him closer. The grip was icy cold, his fingers unnaturally tight. "Let go!" Mark shouted, struggling against Josh's grip, but it was no use. Josh's strength was inhuman. His face was no longer Josh's, it was something else entirely, something grotesque. His skin was pale, stretched tight over his skull, and his eyes were black as coal, devoid of any human emotion. The thing inside Josh opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. It hissed, the sound more like a low growl than a human scream. "Mark!" Sarah cried, pulling at Josh's arm, trying to free him. With a burst of adrenaline, Mark wrenched his arm free, pushing Josh back into the wall. Josh crumpled to the floor with a sickening thud, but the figure inside him wasn't done yet. It was only just beginning. Mark backed away, his eyes never leaving Josh's contorted form. His heart raced, his thoughts a blur. "What is this?" Mark shouted, but no answer came, only the same cold silence, and then the sound that had been haunting them since the first night. A loud, rhythmic thud, 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 like footsteps coming from somewhere deep within the ship, the same unnatural sound he had heard earlier in the hallway. And then it hit him. Whatever was on this ship wasn't just in the walls, it was in the very foundation of the ship itself. Mark turned to Sarah, his mind racing. "We need to get out of here, now." But as they turned to flee, the door to the cabin slammed shut with a deafening crash. The lights flickered violently, then went out completely, plunging them into complete darkness. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and then, from the darkness, they heard it, a voice, deep and guttural, like it was coming from the ship itself. "It's too late." The darkness was suffocating. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, every beat echoing in the silence. His breath came in sharp gasps, and every instinct screamed at him to run. But where could they go? The cabin was pitch black, the faint outline of the walls barely visible in the dimness. His eyes darted around, trying to adjust, trying to see anything that could explain what was happening. But all he could hear were those footsteps, coming closer, each thud like a hammer against his skull. He turned to Sarah, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. She was shaking uncontrollably, her lips trembling as if trying to form words, but nothing came out. "Stay close," Mark whispered, pulling her toward him. He could feel her shaking in his arms, and it was all he could do to keep his own panic under control. They had to get out of here, but the door wouldn't budge. "Please," Sarah muttered, her voice barely a whisper. I don't want to die here, Mark." Mark felt a surge of anger. He couldn't let them die here, not like this, not in this nightmare. "Look at me," he said, taking her by the shoulders, forcing her to meet his gaze. "We're not dying here, we're getting out, but we have to move, now." Before she could answer, there was a crash. The door flew open, slamming against the wall with such force that the whole cabin shook. A tall, dark figure stood in the doorway. It was no longer Josh. The thing in Josh's body was something else entirely. Its face was an amalgamation of twisted, distorted features, half human, half something monstrous. Its eyes were black pits, staring into Mark and Sarah like it could see straight through them. The thing's mouth was wide, too wide, stretching far beyond what any human jaw should be able to do. And then it spoke. "You're too late." The voice was deep, resonating through Mark's very bones, a voice that seemed to come from every corner of the room. It wasn't Josh's voice anymore. It was something else. Mark's blood ran cold. The thing stepped forward, its movements jerky and inhuman, like a puppet with broken strings. Each step it took made the ship groan beneath them, as if the ship itself was reacting to its presence. Sarah clung to Mark's arm, her nails digging into his skin. "What is that thing?" she whispered, barely able to speak through her fear. Mark could barely breathe. He didn't know, but he had a sinking feeling it wasn't just a ghost. It wasn't just a spirit or a haunting. Whatever it was, it had been here for a long time, longer than any of them could imagine. And now, it was waking up. In a panic, Mark looked toward the far side of the room. There had to be another way out, but as he moved, he felt something cold, like fingers brushing against his spine. He spun around, but there was nothing there, nothing but the looming figure of Josh, or whatever had taken his place. The thing reached out a hand, its fingers elongated and gnarled. "You can't escape," it said, the words dripping with malice. "You never could." And then, something changed. The room seemed to twist, as if the very air itself was shifting. The walls began to warp, the ceiling bending as if the ship were buckling under the weight of something immense. The lights flickered again, then burst, leaving them in total darkness. But it didn't matter. Mark could feel it. The ship was alive, breathing, pulsing with something dark and ancient. From the corner of his eye, Mark saw it, a faint glow, a soft light flickering in the hallway outside. He didn't know why, but he knew it wasn't just a light. It was something else, something that had been hidden on this ship, buried beneath the decks for years. "Run!" he shouted at Sarah, We need to get to the lower decks." Without waiting for her response, he grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the door. Ignoring the horrific thing that was inching closer behind them, they bolted down the hallway, Mark's mind racing, trying to think, to make sense of what was happening. But as they turned the corner, they were faced with a new horror. The hallway was no longer the same. It had stretched, twisted, until it seemed endless. The walls were warped, the ship's interior like some hellish maze. The floor beneath them felt unstable, like they were walking on a shifting landscape, one that wasn't made of steel and wood but something far more sinister. And then, they saw it. The door, the real door. It wasn't marked on any map, it wasn't even supposed to be there, but it was. The light, the soft, eerie glow, came from the cracks around this door. As they approached it, the air around them grew colder. Mark's breath came out in misty clouds. The door wasn't just a door, it was a threshold, a boundary, and beyond it, there was something waiting. "No," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "We can't go in there, we can't. It's..." Before she could finish, the door swung open with a deafening creak, and Mark was pulled inside. The room was cavernous, a vast, underground chamber that seemed to stretch far beyond the ship's size. In the center, a massive altar made of stone, but covered in strange symbols, sat under a pulsating light. The air here was thick with an unnatural pressure, like the walls themselves were closing in. And there, at the center of it all, was the source of it all, the creature. It wasn't just a monster, it was something far worse, a force, an entity that had been trapped here, locked away beneath the decks for centuries. It was the ship was it. The creature's massive form loomed above them, its eyes glowing with an ancient, malevolent fire. "It's been waiting," a voice said from behind them. It was Leonard, the waiter. He had been watching them the whole time. "It's always waiting." Mark turned to him, confusion clouding his mind. You knew?" Leonard's smile was cold, twisted. "I didn't just warn you. I've been trying to keep you from waking it, but now that it's awake, there's no turning back." The creature let out a deafening roar, its form shifting and swelling, the air around it distorting like a nightmare. And in that moment, Mark understood. The ship, the Seaborn Horizon, was never meant to be a vacation. It was a prison, and they had all been brought here for one purpose: to feed it. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts on this terrifying story, and subscribe for more spine-chilling horror tales.